Welcome back to the channel. Our 2012 Lincoln MKT is all painted up and ready for us to put it all back together. So let's get it all back together and get it out on the road so it can hunt a few more deers. So the first thing we need to do is remove our radiator support. We only had that in there so the hood would sit level when the painting gnome was painting the outside. We'll very carefully take it out of there and not scratch his work. And then we're going to sit here for hours and change plugs over. A lot of them, the plugs were just smashed, the pins were good, so if I didn't have to splice anything, I didn't. So we're very carefully taking out one pin at a time. And I already took the other plug apart, so we're going to take this pin out. And we're going to put it right in the other plug so that we don't mess up where it goes. Because nothing is worse than trying to find the electrical gremlins when you made them. Put it right back in the same slot, and we'll just keep going down the line, putting the one next to it in, and as long as we keep checking to make sure we're okay, we should have them all back in the same spot. It's always nice when we can do one pin at a time like this. There's a few wires that were broken that we're going to have to repair, and somebody's been here before, so I repaired a lot of the work that they had done. I hope I found it all. Otherwise, it's going to be issues later on. So we have about 5 hours of electrical wire repair here, changing plugs, fixing broken wires. Everyone was asking what this blue wire was for. It's for that. It's a rust proofing scam. It's supposed to make some kind of electric magnetic field to keep the car from rusting. It's basically just a way to take your money. But we'll hook it back up because it was here. Now that we're done with our electrical nightmare, we're going to pull the battery out of the way because it is actually blocking our hood cable that we need to change. So we'll slide it out of here. Oh look, aftermarket wiring. Nothing says high quality install like a fuse just randomly stuffed down here. So we're going to stuff it back down there and put our blinders on and go about our business. So we're changing the hood cable because that tab is broken and we don't need it falling out of our latch when it's all together. So it runs behind the fuse box, so we're just going to shove it through there so that we can work on the part that's next to the tower. And we're going to disconnect it from the inside of the car. Disconnect the actual handle. On this one, the handle doesn't come with, the cable detaches from it. So we're going to pop it out of there. Then there's a couple clips that hold it to the bottom of the dash. And then it disappears up behind a bunch of wires and fuse boxes, and I have no idea where it goes. So I'm hoping it comes out of there. Now we're going to tie a piece of wire to it. It's going to be our fish line. I'm just going to wrap it around the cable and then tape it up real good. Stretch out our fish line here. We want the 14 gauge fish line. And that looks like it should be about enough. So we'll set that on the floor. And we'll go up on the other side and start ripping our cable through there. And hope we don't lose our fish line halfway through or this job gets really complicated. So our cable makes like a 90-degree turn right where it comes through the firewall. So I use that pick to kind of get it to turn where I want it to go so it's coming straight out. And there's our fish line. So we're just going to cut the end of it off. Set our old cable off to the side. It's still behind our electrical box there. Tie the rest of our new cable on there. This is the used one from the parts car. We'll tape it up. This is the same thing I was doing on the inside to pull it through the other way. You guys couldn't see it because, well, I was in the way. So now we'll stuff it through there, get it as far as we can. Then we'll go up on the inside and pull it through. And once we got it all the way down, we can unwrap our fish line. We don't want to cut this one. We got to take it all off of there because this cable is actually going to get saved. Trying to find the end of my tape. Now we can reattach our cable to the handle. And the worst part is over. Or at least I think it is. We'll put our one clip down at the bottom of the dash in. Apparently, Ford built the entire car around the hood cable. And now we're going to tie our new hood cable to the rest of our old hood cable that runs behind the electrical box, so we can finish routing it over there. It was easier to do it in the center here than to try and fight it all the way from front to back. And have to make that little S go around the tower and then back. That's just too much fighting all at once. Especially since it won't even go back here now. There's no clips behind it, it just sits behind that electrical box. Now that we got our new cable through to where we can see the end, we can take the two cables apart and we can pull them through separately. Just makes it a little easier. Probably could have cut the end of this off, the old one, but I didn't feel like walking all the way to the toolbox to grab the side cutters. So we'll just yank it through there. The best part about the corrosion control module, it can't even stop itself from corroding. Maybe it's because they mounted it upside down. So now that we're done back there, we can throw our battery back in, put our hold down on, and bolt it down. Make sure it's in there, give it a good wiggle. It's not going anywhere. We cleaned all the old two-sided tape off of our emblem and put our new stuff on there. So now we just stick them on. No templates required. You just snap right in. Now you can put our passenger door together. Start with our belt molding. Clip it into the slot in the front. And just push it onto the pinch weld. With the belt molding installation tool, of course. Now we can install our handle. Slide it forward, lock it in. Now we'll put the cap on the back and screw that in. Now we'll put our little plug over the hole. Now we can drop our mirror in. Route the harness in there first. Goes around the window track. And clip it into the door. And then tighten up the nuts on the back. And clip the harness in. Run the wires through our little Tupperware lid here. Snap that in the door. You can figure out which way it goes. And then plug our mirror in. Retape my little clip on there. I didn't want to be accused of not putting that clip back on there, so I had to show you because I know we have trust issues. It's bad enough I get accused of not cleaning things before I put them on, but, well, I'm guilty of that, so I guess it's okay. So the inner edge clips over the window channel, and then the outer edge just clips over the back of it. It's not the worst one to install, but all manufacturers need to go talk to Toyota on how to do it right, because theirs are the easiest. You pretty much throw them up there and squeeze and they clip themselves in. GMs are the worst. And they all use them for some reason. And in case you thought no one was watching, the supervisor's always watching. So we're going to put our window back up with the approval of the supervisor. And we can put our door panel back on. We'll route our harnesses through for the window switches. We'll reconnect our door handle. Plug in our door lock button. And then we can slide the door panel over the door lock Get it all lined up. And smash it onto the door. And put our screws back in. Make sure our handle's working. Plug in our switches and snap those in. Another screw in the back. And another screw. And another screw. Not sure why they had any plastic clips. They had a lot of screws in this. Another screw in the bottom. And one more screw. Then we can put our little plastic covers on. And our door is done. Everything works. Now we're going to put our rubber baby buggy bumpers on our hood. At least the ones we have. That was all that was left off of our used hood. We're still missing some, so hopefully our original hood has a couple. Put our lock on. We can put our washer hose on there. Put it all in. And we can put the washer nozzle on the passenger side. The driver's side one was broken. Those are the ones that were crumbling in my hand. So we don't have one. We had to order it from Ford. We can put our insulation up there. Slide it into the tabs. And put the insulation clips in there. And we're feeling dangerous, so we're going to put the prop rod in there. Now why is this dangerous? Well, because when you're putting the rest of the little hood insulation clips in, when you push up on the hood and takes the pressure off of that prop rod, it likes to fall. And there is a 100% chance if it falls, it's going for the freshly painted fender. We also found our other rubber baby buggy bumper, so we put that on. Now, if there wasn't enough rubber stuff on this hood, we're going to put our little gasket in there. And yet one more gasket. And yes, you guessed it, another gasket. Well, look, another gasket. Who would have guessed? Now we can clip our lower door molding on. We took all the clips out of the door, put them in the molding. There's a couple alignment tabs you just line up and push it on there. You can use the belt molding installation tool. And now we're going to take our bumper apart. Use one screwdriver to pry out on it, and the other screwdriver just to release the tabs until this bottom grill pops off. There's actually 3 pieces there. And we'll take the fog lights out. We're going to squeeze the tabs and pop them out of there. And that is a somebody's been here before bumper. It's a Ford bumper, but it wasn't original. Pop our other fog light out. And we'll go snap it in our new bumper. Slides in on the one side, clips in on the other. Pretty easy. Do the same thing with the other fog light. Now we're going to tear the rivets off. This holds that lower panel onto our bumper. And this is the part where the Ford fans get eerily quiet because they spent all that time making fun of all the other manufacturers that don't use any screws in their bumper, or very few. This bumper actually uses 0. There is not a single screw that holds this bumper together. There's a couple that hold it on, but all this plastic stuff just snaps together. And a couple rivets just to really complicate things. So we're just going to tear the bottom off here. If anything breaks, it'll be the bumper cover that's already bad, so we don't care. As a matter of fact, you know where this is going. So now we're going to put our lower grill in. We took the pieces off the outside because I didn't want to scratch it. I'd rather put them in 3 separate pieces than have to tell the painting gnome I messed up his paint. So now we can put the outer pieces in. Use the bumper installation tool. I used all the original stuff because it was in better shape than the used stuff. So we can put our lower piece on here. Snap it together with the bumper installation tool. Then we go get the actual bumper installation tool. Rubber mallet. Because there are a lot of clips that hold this piece on, and I have a lot of aggression I need to work out. So we're going to take it out on this bumper. And now we can throw our rivets in the end. We're going to go with the hand riveter. I didn't feel like turning on the compressor, so I could use the assault riveter. A couple smaller rivets across the bottom. And now we can put our grill assembly in here. You guessed it, just clips in here. A lot of tabs. This thing is a mess. And then we can put our emblem on the front, which we probably should have put in before the grill assembly, but we can still get it in here. So it's got some studs on the back, and it just has little metal pieces that are barbed, and you just push it over the studs. I use a socket to push it down on there to get it nice and tight. So we'll get them started. Once they're all started, we'll push the emblem tight up against the bumper, and then we'll use our socket to push those little metal clips all the way down on the tabs so that our emblem is nice and tight. And now we can put our styrofoam in here. A couple of tabs. It slides over the tabs, and then there's some metal clips that hold it onto those tabs. Now we can put our emblem on the other fender and throw all the plastic on the ground. Give the shop seals something to play with. Line up the tabs on the back and snap it in. Make sure we get it adhered. Give it a couple taps. That's not going anywhere. Now we can change our seat belts. We'll pop the little covers off of our seat and get to the bolts. Unbolt the front of it. And we put the seat forward. Slide the little trap door out of here. And we can see the bolt for the seat belt. Seat down a little bit. Unbolt that. We can unbolt the back of the seat. And now we can unbolt our buckle and then unplug it. The seat is pretty heavy, so I didn't want to take it out of the car. I just kind of turned it sideways so I could work on it. And you can see the difference. One's a little shorter than the other. The short one is the deployed one. At least I hope it is, because we're putting the other one in. So line up the tab, and bolt it in. You can plug it in. Treasures. Then we can pull our B-pillar trim off so we can see our seatbelt, the retractor side. Unplug that and unbolt it. And wiggle it out of the pillar. Now we'll set our new one in here. Slide the top tab in. And then bolt the bottom in. And plug it in. Pop the cover off the top. And unbolt it. And we can run our new one up. Make sure it's not twisted or anything. Bolt that in. Put our little cap back on. Supervisor, making sure I'm doing everything right. Making sure I'm using my torque wrench. Now we can put our lower B-pillar trim back on. Just line up the tabs and clip it into the B-pillar and clip it into the sill plate. We can bolt our seat back down. Put our little covers back on. Use our belt molding installation tool for that. And bolt the back of the seat in. Now we can bolt our seat belt to our seat. Put our little trap door back on there. Then we'll turn the key on and make sure our airbag emoji's gone. We'll put our bumper brackets in. This one we got to put the little plastic piece in. We had it out so we could edge it. Clips in at the top, and then the one screw in the bottom. And Ford delivered our little washer nozzle, so we'll clip that in. Snap that into the hood. And now we have to change our radiator. We got a brand new radiator, but it was the wrong one. So we have to disconnect our cooling fans. And we'll pull our condenser off the front of the radiator. Set that down. And here's our new radiator. Slightly taller. That explains why the old one was zip tied in there. So now we can put our condenser back on it. I think that the radiator that they put in there was for a 3.5, probably a little shorter because the intercooler goes below it. This one doesn't have a turbo, so no intercooler, just a bigger radiator. I guess that extra 2 liters needs more cooling. Maybe Ford just wanted to put a bigger radiator in it so that they'd have more antifreeze to fill up the oil pan in the future when the water pump goes bad. We'll clip our cooling fan in, a couple slots in the bottom, and a couple screws in the top. And now we'll take the whole assembly, drop it in our radiator support. Set it in the rubber baby buggy bumpers at the bottom. And then we'll throw our plastic bags on the ground for all the little children to play with. We had to get all of our new mounts for the top. There were none. There weren't even pieces of them left. So the rubber bushings and the plastic pieces were brand new. And we had to put them together. They come separate. So just snap in there. Trying to figure out how it goes. I have nothing to reference because there were zip ties in here when I started and nothing in the other one. The deer took the other one apart and didn't tell me how he did it, so I'm just making it up as I go along. I think we got it right. So now we'll slide it on the studs in the top of the radiator. Set it into its little slot. Hopefully it doesn't engage because we still need to get the one on the other side. They're really hard to get to clip in there, but if I didn't want them clipped in, you know they would immediately just fall into place. I push them in, and that's what they look like. Little tabs stick through, and they sit up on top of the radiator there. To take it out, you just lift up on those tabs and the radiator pops out. Not a bad design if they would have made the plastic a little higher quality so it didn't shatter. Now we're going to swap over our radiator hoses. And when you're using original radiator hoses, there's a little tab that lines up with the tab on the radiator. It's like a marker. So that tells you where it should be clocked at. Yay, spring clamps. The evil kind, and this one was on its lock. Luckily it didn't get me. Pull a little cap off of the radiator, throw it on the ground, line up our tabs. I do actually save those caps for the radiator. I end up using them when I take things apart to cap it off while I'm working on it. If I have a car that I take the radiator out of, I just find one of the caps that fit on it so that the radiator is not open to the elements while I'm working. We don't want all that metal shavings and everything else I'm grinding getting in there. And we're still fighting with our spring clamp. Got to get it in just the right spot. Bothers me if I don't line it up with the old marks. And I'm also trying to not get it onto its lock, so you got to squeeze it just enough that it works, but not so much that it ends up on the lock waiting to smash your fingers. One more radiator hose. This is our upper. That lined up, clip it in, and our assembly is ready to drop in here. It's a little heavy and awkward. I'm trying not to hit the freshly painted fenders because it's actually wider than the fenders in the front, so you have to lean it back and then slide it forward. All while not getting the hoses caught on anything. We're past the fenders. Slide it forward a little bit. Put a couple bolts in there. Put our bolts in the bottom. Run our hood cable through. Now we're going to put our grate stuff back in here to hold this piece in. We had it out so that we could straighten it, and it was all broken out of there before. This is rigid pillar foam. It's basically just like grate stuff. It just expands, except it costs about 100 times more. Ridiculous what they want for this stuff. We just run a bead all the way around this little cap at the end. This is just to keep water out. And then it'll just expand and hold that cap into place. There's a couple of little Christmas trees that hold it into the outside while we're doing this. And now we can put our condenser back together. Pull our little caps off of there that we had on there so we didn't get any debris in there. We had changed the O-rings right away. I always change them when I take it apart. That way I know it's ready to go back together. Tighten up our lines. Click. Click. And now we'll hook up our overflow bottle. Nice and convenient down there. And our upper radiator hose. Slide the spring clamp back. And our lower radiator hose. Uh-oh. That one's on the lock. We're going to defuse the bomb. Now we can clip our wiring harness in across the top of our radiator support. And tuck it all in over here. Plug in our cooling fan. And plug in our ambient temperature sensor. And the rest of our harness on this side. And our airbag sensor. We can hook up our corrosion control module and pretend like it's actually going to do something. Now we can disconnect our temporary trans cooler. I just took the two hoses and put them together with a little pipe that now just left for Narnia. That way I could drive it around when there was no radiator in there, pull it in the paint room, take it back out. So now we can hook our cooler back up, slide our spring clamps up, plug in our switch for our hood. Then we can put our baffles on the front here, just the top half. These are actually going to be in our way, and I would wait to put them in, but then I would forget. So I'm going to put them in now so I don't end up having to take the bumper off more than once. Now we'll clean up our battery terminals. And put our battery back together. We use a wrench on this side. Can't get the impact in there to really upset the tool experts. Put a little cap on there to, I don't know, stop it from corroding. Clearly it doesn't work, along with the corrosion control module. And we'll tighten up this cable. I really should have got the impact. They definitely could have fitted in this side. And I put a little grease on it. Hopefully that'll keep it from corroding. Probably not. Now we can throw our headlight in here. Clip it in. Slide it back into the fender. A couple alignment pins in the back, and we can bolt it all in. Do the same thing on the driver's side. Put it in. Now we can bolt our hood latch in and find out what kind of day we're going to have if the hood doesn't line up. So we'll connect our hood cable on one side and the safety release on the other side. This one cable just wasn't enough. And then we'll bolt it up here. Now I haven't had this in here yet, so I'm hoping that everything lines up. There is quite a bit of adjustment on there, so I shouldn't have a problem. And it's pulling the hood over to one side and messing up our gaps, so we need to move it around a little bit. I went with where the old marks were, but that radiator support does move side to side, front to back, so even if we ran out of adjustment on our hood latch, we could move the radiator support to compensate for it if we had to. But it doesn't look like we have to. Our gaps are right. We had plenty of adjustment. Now we could put our extension on the side of the cowl screen. That's what Ford calls it, not me. It just clips into the fender. I think you might want to turn that over there. There you go. It slides under the edge of the cowl screen. So you lift up on that a little bit and just snap it into the fender. The glass guys were here when we weren't watching and installed our new windshield for us. So now we can drop our air box in. There's a couple rubber grommets that the tabs on the bottom of the air box slide into. Put a little grease on them so it slides together. And there's two bolts in the top. And a brand new fresh air filter. Drop that in. And now we can put the cover on. Slide the tabs in. Attach it to the throttle body. And start hooking up all of our hoses. Clip it down. Tighten up our clamp. And plug in the mass airflow sensor. Now we can change our power steering cooler across the bottom. This is why those baffles were going to be on our way, but like I said, I would have forgot to put them in if I waited until after I did this. So we have our new one. Well, it's used, but it's not bent like the old one was. We'll bolt that to our radiator support. Slide our hose off of there. Put it on our new one. Slide our spring clamp back in there. And then clip the bottom of this baffle in. Do the same thing on the other side. Yay, spring clamps. Slide our baffle in there and push it in. And we'll go set this off to the side to drain. And now we're going to polish up these headlights because, well, they're a little dull and hazy. I'm just trying to clean up the heaviest haze because it's a lot easier to do it now while the bumper's off than once the bumper's on. These are going to get buffed again when the detailing gnome has it, but he'll just basically be polishing them up real good. They didn't come out too bad. Now we can throw our bumper up here. Always make sure you check the lights before you put the bumper up so you don't end up having to take the bumper back down if the lights don't work. I did not, and I'm going to regret it. I forgot that I was working on a Ford, and of course, things aren't going to go right. So, we'll slide our bumper up there, flip it in under the headlights, and we'll put a couple screws in it so it doesn't end up on the floor. We'll use our bumper installation tool to clip it into the fender. Tighten up the bolt on that side. And clip the bumper into the fender on this side. And tighten up our bolt. And we'll close our hood and make sure all our gaps are right. Now that our bumper's on, we can plug in our fog lights, which requires a swivel joint in your wrist because they decided to put a washer bottle there. This side is a little easier. You can reach right in and get it. Tuck our wheel liner back up there. And bolt that in. And to prove we have trust issues, I did say I cleaned all the dirt out of here, and everyone said, no, you didn't because it wasn't on video. Well, now it is. So, ha. So I'm cleaning out this compost bin that Ford put back there to help rot the fender faster. Luckily, it was combated by the corrosion control module. And there's our compost bin. So now we can put our molding back on the back of our fender here. There's one alignment tab. That just clips in. Put screws in it. So now we can glue our fender back on. Does it really matter? Nope. But was it glued on from the factory? Yep. So I'm putting it back like I found it. In my experience, when somebody's been here before, about 80% of them don't get glued back on, and it makes absolutely no difference. But Ford wanted a quieter interior so that when you're sitting on the side of the road waiting for a tow truck, you don't hear all that road noise. So we're going to glue it back on for them. Now we can put our wheel liner in. And had they used a carpeted wheel liner, that would have given me something else to complain about, and maybe they wouldn't have had to glue the fenders on. I think I would rather carpeted wheel liners, except for when I'm cleaning the car, which doesn't really happen very often, so I guess I don't really know. Put our push pins in and screw our wheel liner in. Put our little molding on the back of our fender in here. Bolt that in. Found some random push pins in the bucket, so they look like they'll fit here. We'll clip the top of our grill in here. So our bracket on our original one is broken right here. And I had to gut it because all of this was from our parts car. That's a little corroded. Our light wasn't working. That goes in right here. That's all corroded. That's all corroded. I didn't even want to try the light, so just toss that out. I had to change this plug, which goes in the back of our housing here. Right there. And then that little harness plugs in there. The back of the light there. There's another little circuit board down in here. Actually, that's the wire that goes to it. It goes right about where it is on the other side. That was the most fun to get to. Now there's another plug in here for the other LEDs. I would have showed you, but I couldn't even see what I was doing. So there's no way you were going to. So now after that nightmare of trying to get that wiring harness inside that light, we have all our lights. We'll check them. I did wait until I had the bumper on because I wanted to check the fog lights at the same time. Looking back, that was a bad decision. But everything works now. So now we're going to put our wax in our upper frame rail because we did weld those brackets on and we can't get to the inside of it, so we do want to coat them so it doesn't rust. I waited to do this till the end because if we put the wax on first, none of our foam is going to stick. It'll just wash right off the wax. So you put the foam on, let it dry, and then wax everything. Now the customer requested that we change the oil, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to take down this big engine cover. And somebody's been here before. They're supposed to be just little wing nuts, but somebody put a self-tapping screw in here. So we'll take that out. And then we'll take this down, and this is holding all of our plastic. We'll dump that out. And our oil plug was actually not super tight, so this was clearly not done at Jiffy Lube. And we'll put our oil plug back in after it's done draining. Tighten it down to 6,000 foot-pounds. Click. And we'll spin our filter off of here. Yeah. One more thread. New filter up. Grab our torque rag. Tighten it down to manufacturer specs. Click. And we'll do a little cleaning. Not that we need to. We got that big cover. That'll absorb all the oil. Put our push pins in the bottom of our bumper to hold it to the radiator support. And we'll put our big cover up here. This is actually part of the trailer package. A lot of these don't have this. But when you buy a trailer hitch, you get this with it. Don't ask me why. Put our custom self-tapping screw back in there. And we'll put our oil back in. And we even have a dipstick now to check it. Before we put the cap back on, we'll put our engine cover on so we don't have to look at the engine anymore. And put our oil cap in. And got to turn it over or somebody's going to lose their mind. And the customer requested that I take these stickers off the back. And due to their obscure placement, I'd have to say they're probably hiding something. And a little bit there. And it looks like a pretty good scratch there. Because bumper stickers randomly placed about the back of your car always look better than a little scratch. So if you have random bumper stickers all over the back of your car you want to remove, these magic erasers are available in my Amazon store. These have been on there for a while, so the glue is kind of just making a mess. But it'll take most of the sticker off and just leave the glue backing. A couple more scratches down here and paint missing. So now we're just going to take some wax and grease remover and clean off all the sticky stuff. As long as the sticker itself is gone, the glue will come off with the wax and grease remover. We got some new lifts for the hood because the old ones were a little on the weak side. Hadn't been to the gym in a while. Just pull the little collar back. We're going to take the prop rod out of our way because we don't want that falling on our freshly painted fender. And we'll hold it up with our head and get it just right and hopefully pop this thing off. There you go. A little bit of wiggle. That's what it took. Put our prop rod back in there for the time being. So we can get the bottom one off. This one should come off easier since it's not connected at the other end. And it did. Clip our new one in. And one was enough to hold it up. But we bought two, so we're going to throw two on here. Put the collar back, push up on the hood a little bit, and it pops off. This one was really bad. It couldn't even lift itself up. Put the new one in, and we're all done. So our Lincoln is all back in one piece, cleaned up, and ready for the funeral procession. Lincoln MKT. for when the kids need to be at school at 11, but the coffin needs to get to the cemetery by noon. And Ford fans, before you get all triggered and start whining in the comments, the estimating guide literally calls this a hearse. So I'm just calling it what Ford called it, probably because it looks like one. The owner did request that we filled in the holes for the license plate bracket on the front because it's a Michigan car and they don't have front plates. So we removed that. We cleaned up the engine to get all the oil off of it, and plastic and everything else. And we cleaned up the interior. Not part of the accident, but at the owner's request. Sorry we don't get to play What's in My Console because it's not my car, although all the contents of the console are in the box in the back. That's the end of this build. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.